Hello, and welcome to the CTN webinar. The topic for today is making digital practical and measurably impactful. And thank you so much, FPT, for supporting this conversation. My name is Sanjog Aul. I am from CTN, that is CIO Talk Network, and I will be your moderator. My request will be for all the attendees to keep their microphones muted, but that's not to say we will not invite you because this is like a workshop. So we will be inviting your comments by requesting you to unmute when needed. And when we are done with it towards the tail end, it's going to pop up a form and just fill it up, tell us how we did. Thanks. And now we will talk about the digital, but before we do that, how about I ask all of you a question, and this question also goes for the panelists. If you were a professional athlete, which sport would you pick? A world-class athlete, which one would you pick? The one which you want to pursue. Anyone, folks?
Sanjog, I would pick the marathon. That's my sport of choice.
All right. So I got one answer, tennis. And I'm sure others would also want to share what their professional sport could be.
I'd be a skier all the time. I was going to say golf. You're outside all the time. Skiing. Allison, sorry, I'll let you talk to that.
Yeah, I'd be a skier. I love the outdoors. I love the winter. And
okay, I would take the surfing because I'm a guy from the south, from the beach. So for me, it would be surfing.
All right. So the reason I wanted to bring this up as the athlete, because what you see in a professional athlete is they have to build endurance. They have to master the skills. And whenever they get a chance to perform, they have to give their best. So talk about, or let me try to connect it to what we are dealing with today. So we all started our respective digital transformation journey quite a few years ago, I'm sure. For many, it may be newer, but many others who started early, they are still on it. What has happened is there have been quite a trials and tribulations for people. And as we talk to the world out there in our capacity in media, what we are finding is there are still pockets where you would see the staff being digitally unaware. Or you might find people who are business people who said, okay, you give me digital means you give me a possibility to find the insights myself. That self-service aspect is missing. Or you got inconsistent user experience offered. And these are just a few that I am outlining here. So the idea is to figure out what would it take to not just look at these symptoms, but to build a good foundation in such a way that we have the right culture, which will ensure success of our digital transformation. Then we pick the right, most problematic departments, but at the same time, don't put all our energies in there, but instead also look at which departments would get the most benefit from putting digital in. And then coming to the very topic, what would we do to make sure that we measure the success, and more importantly, not the success, which is just a milestone, the impact of that effort that you're putting in. And finally, none of that would be possible if we did not budget for this transformation and an ongoing basis fund it or finance this journey. So we'll be talking all of this, and for that, I have got specific professional athletes with me. So we have Karl Hightower, Chief Data Officer at Novant Health. Hey, Karl, how are you?
Doing well. Thank you. How are you?
Great, sir. Great. And we have David Baker, Chief Information Officer with Pacific Dental Services. He's basically, David is a Chief Information and a Digital Officer with Pacific Dental Services. Hey, David, how is life?
Hey, doing well. Yeah, they stuck another letter in that. So it's a bit more fancy now, right? From CIO to CIDO. There you go. Things are good.
There you go. Yeah, that's a new title you're bringing in. So we have Frank Bignone, who is the Chief Digital Transformation Officer from FPT. Hey, Frank, how's life there?
Oh, fine. Thank you very much. And nice to see all of you tonight.
Great. Alyson Hudson, Chief Information Officer, Prudential Financial. Hi, Alyson.
hi, everybody. Thanks for having me.
Great. And Neelesh Prabhu, Managing Director, Chief Technology Architect with DTCC.
Nice to be here.
All right, great. So we got a great panel here, and I've already kind of set the stage on what we want to do, but let's talk about the mechanics of this. What we will quickly do is we will go through we will ask each panelist about their top challenge, which holds them back from making digital practical and measurably impactful. And then I will also be asking the audience members to also put in chat what their challenge is, and I might even request you to speak up. I will request you to unmute and share your top challenge. The goal is in the first 10 to 15 minutes, we should not talk solutions. We should just put all challenges which are haunting us or which are holding us back. And then we will get into a targeted solution discussion. So the way we would go about doing this is we will take 2 or 2.5 minutes each for each panelist. So with that said, Karl, why don't you get started with a quick background about yourself, your organization, and give a context of the top challenge you're facing, and give it to us in 4 to 5 words, if you could, the top challenge you're referring to.
All right, I'll work on my thesaurus there to make sure I get it to 4 or 5 words on this. So Karl Hightower, Chief Data Officer and Senior Vice President on Data Products and Services for Novant Health. We are a Southeast U.S. healthcare system. We have 17 hospitals. We have 700 clinics. We touch 1.6 million lives. You look at a very broad expanse. As healthcare itself is going through a digital transformation, data as a backbone is required to help the patients, the clinicians really drive that next level of healthcare that's being expected. For us, as our 4 to 5 word challenge, it really comes down to expectations and adoption of everyone involved.
So expectation and adoption of everyone involved. Okay, so David, why don't you go next? David, can you hear us?
Yes, sorry. The old ad, it wouldn't be right. Someone didn't have a mute issue, right? On these. So they make a CIDO over at a company called Pacific Dental Services. We're one of the largest dental support organizations in the US. We just surpassed 850 offices, and on average, we open up two offices every week. My role is supporting everything I say with a plug on the edge across our entire digital continuum, and helping our dental partners, our dental owners in the offices, build great dental practices. We put the entire kind of support piece behind that, from the HR to the IT, finance, you name it. Everything is in place to help them build great, successful practice. From 5 words, talent war is real, and working on building great teams and sourcing talent to support our growth is really the biggest problem I'm up against right now.
So talent and teams is what you are seeing as your top thing that holds you back, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So now we'll take Alyson. How about you?
Hi, everybody. I'm Alyson Hudson. I'm the CIO for Enterprise Workforce Solutions for Prudential Financial. We provide insurance and investment management and other financial products and services, both to retail and institutional customers throughout the United States and over 40 other countries. My area of influence is the actual internal employee experience. And when I talk about our top challenges, one is really around just a disconnected user experience, lack of accessibility, and a real understanding of how to engage with our users.
All right. Neelesh.
Hi, my name is Neelesh Prabhu. I work for DTCC, and I'm the Managing Director and Chief Technology Architect for DTCC. DTCC is the world's largest premier post-trade market infrastructure, where we provide standardization, stability, and orchestration for the capital markets ecosystem. We stand at the center of that ecosystem and clear trillions of dollars in value on a daily basis to enable that. In terms of challenges, a few words which would describe that. as we bring in new digital technologies, ensuring that the resiliency, stability, and security of the market infrastructure continues to stay at the same levels or improve as we do that.
All right, Frank.
Yes, thank you. So I'm from FPT Software. FPT is the largest Asian company providing IT professional services. So we are working worldwide. For myself, I'm managing worldwide the transformation team inside FPT Software. We have offices in US, in Europe, in Middle East, in Asia, quite a lot of region. And most of the challenges that we see are indirect, because there are challenges that we are trying to solve for our customers. And today, in few words, some of the challenges that we see from a customer perspective, the first one will be acceleration. People now want to accelerate, and how to accelerate in a good manner. So you have the talent that goes with that. One other challenge that we can see is stickiness, usability, to make sure that what we will deliver through this transformation, people will use it. So on the usability, and also we stick with it. We not come back to what we are doing before. And another challenge that we see, and it's a good topic for this workshop, is how to measure the value that is generated, and especially helping our customers not to develop the best ideas that they may have, but putting in place framework to find the best idea to develop and to implement at the end of the day. So it's really, in a nutshell, most of the challenge today that we're helping our customers.
All right. So with that said, we got quite a few flavors of the kind of challenges which panelists shared. So my next request will be for audience members to quickly put in chat what have you seen as your top challenges? Anything that you feel you may have had you're faced, and then that is holding your organization back. And if you'd like to, I can definitely unmute and get you guys talking. All right. So while you think about it, let's move on to the solutions section. And this is where we will come back again in the same order. So Karl, you said you had expectation and adoption of everyone involved. That's your the way you define the challenge. Well, you cannot please everyone. You cannot bring everyone on board, but you got a business agenda to meet. So this problem or this challenge that you're facing, did you do something on the ground, something tactical, something fundamentally different for you to crack this problem? Because this almost looks like a change management / leadership issue.
Yeah. And so when expectations, there are three main areas that you're hitting this. You're looking at patients, people, customers who have gotten used to a very digital mobile world with things like retail, being able to have all of this power on your phone. So you start to look at that expectation management around providing care, interaction, information. You're also looking at clinical teams who have been very one-on-one. So what is digital really going to do? How is it going to replace? How is it going to help? Instead of artificial intelligence, you look at it as augmented. So you're reaching people as going, this is a tool for helping you. So really communicating, I think, differently to each of the individual constituents as you start to get in there, really look at their perspective of digital, because you're looking at people who have from that, it's going to do everything. This is the Star Trek Enterprise. I expect it to answer every question possible, to being something of, hey, I don't want to use this. Show me how it's a beneficial tool and not a replacement for. And then, of course, you have the expectations of executive management. It's, I should be able to pick this up off the street. I can get anybody to work on this. And it comes into, this is hard. It's a journey. How do I get the right talent, the right processes? And I think it's been mentioned a couple of times, change management around this. People will be adopting this. What's the expectation setting? How are you working with them to change their processes? So a lot of the work on the ground is communication and working with them to get their perspectives and show them how this works in their world going forward. So it's not easy to do it. There's no magic pill. This is a lot of communication and hard work.
So question is, this is not something new that you're trying to, raise a child, if you will, right? So you're not teaching them. Are they not getting it because of which, they're not getting the fundamentals on what it's going to do or what's going to do for me, or their respective agendas are not met? Where did you find, was there any diagnosis that you tried doing?
You look at, so I've come from outside of healthcare. So I've worked in energy, banking, retail, logistics. So I've worked in all these different industries, and there are points in time, there are tipping points where they go through transformations. So you're looking at industries where it's been very isolated or very much, I've worked my entire career in. So how do you take the expectation of other industries and help move them into this? And so it's a lot of kind of just opening up eyes of reality, the hard work, as opposed to, I would call it the commercialization and the vendor promises and really going, no, AI isn't magic. It's not Harry Potter. It's a tremendous amount of work to make the math and the statistics actually viable. And that's really, it's spending the time to get them to answer all their questions and kind of get over those humps.
So you go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, just Karl, to add to that, right? Like for prior life was massive healthcare, acute, ambulatory, and it's a hard industry, right? Because change is just very slowly adopted. It's very traditional. There are many, barriers, and the refreshing part for me now, being in more of the dental spaces, it's a lot faster moving. I think looking back, right, through those eyes of when we first deployed Patient Portal and some of the digital experience you're talking about, it's just trying to move it through the internal authorization mechanisms, if you like, it's like passing an act to Congress. So I feel for you.
The other challenge with digital, and I think Karl, you spoke around the promises and the hype which follows it, right? It's a little bit like an iceberg, where you see the tip of the iceberg and assume that that's the amount of work which needs to occur. While in reality, just like an iceberg has a huge body or more mass underneath it below the water level, there is a lot of hard work which needs to occur. It includes change management. It includes, like in case of AI, making sure the right kind of data elements are available. So I think part of the communication challenge for us as CIOs is to sell the whole story, right? It's not only the tip of the iceberg, but what resides below. We have to develop those muscles in order to advance the problem forward.
In a lot of our industries, you've also got regulations that make some of these things really challenging. When you think about being in the financials industry, the medical industry, our regulations are so far behind. Even if you think about employment regulations, AI and technology for screening candidates or assessing candidates, there's a lot of hoops to jump through. And the EEOC, they're not necessarily up to date on these newer techniques. So you have to balance how far can you take it. So again, highly regulated companies, they have a whole nother set of challenges. And I know in the financial industry, this is, not my first rodeo in financials. You're also dealing with companies that have longevity of employees. So you're driving change and transformation. And, a significant amount of your employee base has been here their entire career, and they don't know what it looks like outside of your company. And transformation and change is very threatening, and, trying to figure out how to help upskill, reskill people and help them transform with you. That on top of change management is a whole nother layer that you have to add on for a lot of these companies.
So, Frank, you want to put in, give your thoughts here?
Yes, especially for the domain of AI that you are discussing and so on. One thing that we see also is sometimes the disconnection between the data science team that is working in some company, working on all this analytics, advanced analytics and so on. And at the end of the day, the business user or the people that are just in the office, that should be the recipient of the results. And that's why if we want to look at this keyword, how to make it impactful and practical, looking also from the user perspective, how to make easy to use AI model, because AI models are complex sometimes. How to look at this usability. This is something that is quite important, and we see quite a lot in many of the engagement, how to break or to bridge, I would say, data science teams with business users, and working really at this bridge, looking at it as holistically from the beginning, because it may impact also some of the research, how people are designing model and stuff at the end of the day.
So, Karl, if you had to walk away with one actionable takeaway, like be the student, right, and get something out of this, what snag would you like to, which you might be facing, or a very specific thing which is keeping you up at night? What would you like to get advice on? That one thing.
I think we can all get better at communication and reaching people. No matter whether you think you have a great story or you think you have everything ironed out, I think finding new ways to communicate, new ways to reach people where it clicks. I think that's what all of us are striving for, because it's hard to get every perspective on it and to see why barriers to adoption or execution exist. And that's a lot of the problems we get to in some of the newer technologies is, okay, how are you not seeing it exactly the way that I see it? And that gets into communication and really trying to break those barriers down on both sides.
Karl, one of the things that we did to address that, because that's something we've been struggling with as well, is we actually have a team that's focused on the voice of the employee. And we've got, a cohort of employees who participate in this work with us, from ideation sessions to talking about their pain points, what they're experiencing. And they actually often beta our releases before we go out and give us feedback. And it's actually incredible how many times we look at something through a new lens when you have this, really broad set of people that are looking at it through those individual lenses. But it may be something that could help you navigate through that a little bit.
That's a good point, and we see this quite a lot, even for data analytics and so on. We are using techniques like ideation, design thinking, and so on, to make sure that at the end of the day, what is going out really is trying to address the core of the problem and the core of the users, really what they want to experience at the end of the day. And this is, I would say, good practice for any, I would say, problem challenge that you want to solve at the end of the day. And this can bring also agility inside your team.
So I had a question which came up, and Rash Patnaik is the attendee who is asking this question. So Rash, could you unmute and just ask that question directly about your zero trust model? All right, so while he gets his audio fixed, so the question was, within the financial sector, everyone wants to ensure that they are not the next Capital One. So given how are you all ensuring that a zero trust model is applied without hindering the digital transformation process?
Yeah, I can maybe start. So I think it's the way we've been thinking through this is it's important that the digital transformation which is occurring, there is complete transparency into the fact that some of these things like security, resiliency, compliance, these are basic table stakes which we need to meet in order to build on from a digital transformation perspective. So that what it really means for us is ensuring that all of these things, we drive a shift left approach where they're baked into the initial design and application and development processes itself. A vast majority of the challenges come in because you're trying to apply these cross-cutting concerns like security, compliance, after the core design has occurred. So that's been a lot of our effort. And that implies that you are putting the right tooling, the right transparency in the initial part of the process itself. So we've developed toolkits, user stories, non-functional requirements, which are presented to our agile teams as they start to create initial sprints and the sprint plan for how they'll execute.
I think that's great commentary. Neelesh, on
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can. So yeah, Rash, we'll have David speak and then you
go
can
ahead.
give your comment as well. Go ahead.
I'm glad I wasn't the only one with microphone issues. Yeah, it's starting with that foundation, right? Like you said, and I think it's important. It's hard. It's so hard trying to do it in the middle of, right, and especially in the healthcare business. I think we have the same struggles, right, as the finance business. We absolutely have to guard that patient data, right? And you guys are guarding folks' money, and you can't come in midway and create this platform, right? It's got to be a ground up, right? Ground zero. And I think a lot of that build came from our initial governance plan of how do we put the guardrails around essentially, now a $2 billion healthcare company, and I've been involved in healthcare companies up to $20 billion. And it's similar, right? It gets a little more elaborate and the team is certainly bigger and you need a solid security officer to partner with on that. But it's absolutely around the governance model and those table stakes of the data should be guarded and zero trust is really relevant. It's not a bad thing, right? It's like how do we ensure every interaction on our network and in our systems is accounted for and approved.
So Rash, does it give you the answer you were looking for?
It gives me a bit of a direction. The challenge that I find right now in the financial industry and insurance is explaining zero trust. And a lot of the issues the business has is they think it's microsegmentation. It's basically applying a network isolated zone or I forgot the term, but like an isolated network zone is probably the best with firewalls and access lists, whereas it's really about authentication and identity. And we're going through this with a program that we have at Sun Life right now, and we're introducing it as zero trust at the low end, and we're trying to overlay some of that identity pieces, working with info security and some of the other teams. I think, Rash, just a couple of comments on what you said, right? One of the things which we found is we spoke about communication, but depending on what part of the organization you're speaking to, tailoring that message on the need for zero trust, the need for additional layers of security is key and critical to success. You mentioned some high profile incidents which have occurred as CIOs and technology stakeholders. I think it's important as we engage with our business is use the business impact of those incidents to highlight the need and necessity for investments in these areas. So I think ensuring that people at different parts of the organization understand the impact of some of these things, which to your point, people might think as, might question the relevancy, the need for these things. Highlighting that is important in this change management journey.
Yeah, Rash, maybe the term zero trust is not exactly a great term from an executive level either. I think you nailed it when you said it's really all about identity. It is. So I think we lead out with our identity management team and that terminology, right? It begins with who are you? What do you need access to? Why do you need access to it? And goes from there. So maybe going in with a grand project title of zero trust is a non-starter. I wonder if you just tweak that a little bit.
All right. So go ahead, Frank. You have a thought?
I just wanted to say that this makes sense. And what we see quite a lot also is to have also right governance inside the company, especially when we speak about data. The data governance is something that's quite important also because it will help to build some framework. And then, of course, putting in place things with the cyber team, looking at the SecOps when you're developing application. So from the beginning, you have the security that is taken into account for all the work that you are doing. This is something quite important.
Let's move on to the talent and teams, right? David, you mentioned that, and frankly, that is top of mind for most organizations, right? But then is there something you are able to do so that your organization kind of becomes that North Star and that cool org where you can have foosball table and something cool that will attract you? What are you doing to tackle this problem?
So things have changed, right? Obviously over the pandemic where new expectations have come along, right? We're traditionally an in-person company, and I think built, great culture around that. I think we're forward thinking in terms of, we have innovation group, we have different pockets of our business that given autonomy to kind of build new product, fail fast, right? Take moonshots and not be scared of that failure. The interesting dynamic that's kind of occurring now, and I see like a lot being driven from more progressive technology kind of industries in the Valley, for example, right? Where they're like, okay, we're full remote, no problem with it, or we're hybrid, or do what you want, bring your dog to work. It's different for some of those, some of the more traditional businesses out there. And how do we appeal to kind of that segment of the market and skill set, right? But how do we also, some of what has got us here is not necessarily bad, right? Why change certain things just for the sake of change? So there is this new balance, right? And we're open to it. But what I'm finding is there is more of this demand, certainly on the, hey, I want a full-time remote position. And there's a different way to managing things, right? One, finding the talent, is that an option we should give people? We're experimenting with hybrid for sure. But then two, making sure they have the tools to not only communicate with the rest of the team, but ramp. The onboarding process is really important. And I think we've been working hard on that onboarding process, on that networking piece, right? Of coming through a mid-sized company and understanding like who are the key players, right? We're still, at the end of the day, there's multiple humans that have got to be connected. And there's so much power culturally when you come together through interactions that are not necessarily scheduled, right? Sometimes those conversations via the coffee machine, right? Or in a happy hour make all the difference. And I find accelerate weeks and weeks with the formal kind of meetings and conversations. There is a beauty in that. And Alyson said earlier on, I miss being around people. So do I. So you've got these different sorts of people, right? That want to be around other folks. So we're very happy working in this virtual world, and there's a shift. So I would say we're experimenting. We definitely don't have the answers. And at the end of the day, our core business is we have to have offices open to serve our patients. So we are an in-person business. There's no right now. We're not doing dentistry through an Oculus and some warm hands. So and we probably won't be for some time. So that's where we're at. I don't have all the answers, but I think playing with the different pockets and experimenting a little with what's working, how we get feedback, and making sure that we have the core fundamental tools in place. We have excellent tools for collaboration, I would say, are helping hugely. And the pandemic has driven some of this new world faster than I'd imagined.
So I think flexibility is key, and I don't think there's a one-size model anymore. I think some people are expecting to work from home fully. Some people want to come back to the office. Some people want hybrid. So I think flexibility is going to become key in really shifting how we view work in the office and view those times that we come in as really when do we need to collaborate so people don't get back into the habit of coming into a building and just putting their heads down for 8 hours a day and then going home. And also, we've been really investing in, prior to the pandemic, we started investing in creating our talent marketplace and really culturally shifting careers into the hands of the employees and really focused on upskilling and reskilling and changing the way we assess our talent and helping people map out their career journey. So people have the tools and the technology at their hands. They can connect to any position in the organization, any person in the organization, match up their skills against somebody else's or a role that you are interested in having, and then figure out it shows you where your skill gaps are. So if I understand I'm missing certain skills to aspire to that, it then points me in the direction to learning and development on where I might be able to get those skills. We're working on, the next generation where it's actually going to start to connect you to mentors who can help you get those skills. We've just opened up gig assignments. So if people want to test out a new part of the organization. But through our talent marketplace, when you go in, it suggests career paths to you. You might not have naturally thought yourself by having your profile in there. I always use myself as an example. I've been in technology my whole career, but I've spent a tremendous amount of time in HR technology. I have a lot of cross skills to be in an HR function. If I decided one day I wanted to not be in technology anymore, that would be an interesting lateral career choice for me. Sometimes I get matched to jobs like compliance officers, and I've done a lot of work in legal and compliance technology. It wouldn't be a far stretch. So I think we're trying to help people think outside the box a little bit about their career, and we're really focused on internal mobility. And I think it's helping our story a lot because I think we're starting to really have talent that's more broadly skilled, less deep, and giving people opportunities to stretch. And I think that helps a lot with just morale and understanding, yeah, I can build my career here and I'm getting the tools and the help. And it also helps us as we're building the skills we need for the future and understanding in our organizations, where are we skill gapped and what are the skills we need to focus on to help us drive. And I think that coupled with flexibility is going to be key. I don't think there's going to be a one size fits all model moving forward. And I think leaders are going to have to get comfortable being uncomfortable and managing people in a way that works. To your point, there is a lot of value in being in person. But when that makes sense, it doesn't need to be every day, and being really deliberate and thoughtful about how you're bringing people back to the office. I think those are going to be really keys to the talent war.
What do you think it does to the culture, if you don't mind me asking, Alyson? For such a traditional, right, large company such as yours there, can the culture be maintained or even improved over time in next to a full virtual environment?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we're still figuring that out ourselves. We never saw ourselves as being, we were literally turned on our ears. We went from being in person 4 or 5 days a week to fully remote almost 2 years ago. And it's been phenomenal to watch people adapt and adjust. And we've been, the business outcomes have been phenomenal, and the teams are working really well and they're figuring it out. I think this model is a little bit easier than what comes next. And I've worked in the hybrid model. I think for a lot of leaders, the hybrid's going to get more challenging, where we're not all connected the way we are here. Some people are sitting around a desk, some people are connected. And I think it's going to take a lot of training and cultural work. And I don't think it's going to be a one size fits all for any organization. I think some areas of business are going to do better fully remote. Some areas are going to need some in person. And I think it's going to be leaving it up to the business leaders to nuance it for their areas to keep that healthy balance of culture and flexibility.
Yeah, David, kind of addressing on both of those areas since the pandemic began, and everybody who wasn't clinically facing, now you're working from home, now you're working remote. We also opened up where we were recruiting from. If you can work from home, well, that no longer means you need to be near a hospital as far as our offices go. So it opened up a tech pool that we didn't previously have available to us, but it also creates challenges of, we need to be better at communication. We need to be better at including people because they don't have that history of being together. They're coming from different states. They're coming from different areas. So it was a good and a bad thing, because now it kind of makes us get a little bit more thoughtful with the processes of how we work together as a team.
Yeah, Karl, that's a really interesting point out, because in my prior life, we adopted a hybrid model far before the pandemic hit. And, as a result, one of the highest scores we improved in our employee engagement were the flexibility. People loved the idea that they didn't matter whether they were working and they could connect. But the highest negative score that we saw was people didn't feel part of a team. So it's kind of the yin and the yang. And that's where we learned we really needed to work with the leaders and make sure that they understood how to lead in a hybrid model, and how do you keep the chemistry going? How do you have, the right virtual events, and how do you do those, whether it's virtual coffee chats or the ways to keep people connected, because you can keep people connected. You don't have to physically be in the office, but it means that the leaders have to be more deliberate about their actions, and they have to work a little harder. And how do you still celebrate your wins and make people feel those things? And there's so many tools available to us, but it doesn't come instinctively or naturally to all leaders. So I think it's an area, as we get to hybrid, we're going to have to really focus on teaching people, how do I conduct a meeting with people around the table and people on the screen? How do I, make sure my team members that are far away still feel like they're part of the journey? And that's the piece I think that's going to be harder than the technology. It is helping leaders lead in this new world.
Neelesh, do you have a thought?
Yeah, I think it's, also being, especially for folks who are operating in a hybrid model, being very deliberate about what you do when you are in a particular setting, right? So for example, a very negative outcome could be we get people in work, but they are sitting in their desk attending Zoom meetings, right? That's not the kind of experience we want to bring to the table. So being deliberate, maybe there are specific events during the life cycle of your project where you bring people in, and that interaction is rich and rewarding so that people appreciate the interactions with their folks, and it brings the spirit of the team alive. So I think that's very important, and arming our managers with those skill sets and those tools to do that is going to be critical to the success of a hybrid model.
Frank, do you have any specific things you've seen companies do where they have been successful in at least tackling this whole team and people issue?
Yeah, so both internally and externally. Internally in FPT software, this is something that we are tackling because we are looking a lot of talents, really a lot of talents. I mean, we are hiring thousands of people every year, tens of thousands of people every year. And what we can see, and this was something that Alyson was mentioning, we are not looking only at hiring external people, but also looking at how to reskill and upskill our own employee on, for example, new tech and so on. And this is quite very important. So that's why we, in FPT software, we have what we call FPT University. We have our own universities. And we have also, we also open the X Academy to really help our people to be able to upskill themselves and to provide them all the tools, all the means in order to feel good in the company, and also to see that they have a clear career path. They have they can change their career. They have a lot of opportunities, and they can learn a lot of new things. The second thing is also to keep all the teams connected. We implemented enterprise social networks, and this worked very well because it gives a way of communicating with the people, which is not the classic Zoom, which is not the classic, I would say, email and so on, which is more what they are doing in a private life with a mobile phone and so on, but inside the company from an enterprise point of view. So of course you have some clear guidelines for that. And it helps to have sometimes even these chit chats that you may have around the coffee machine and so on that you cannot do, but at least you have the means, the technology means to bring that. And implementing what also Alyson was mentioning, virtual coffee time. So we have specific tea time, which is 15 minutes every day for different team, different level, mixing also management with employee and so on. And it's forbidden to talk about business during these 15 minutes. And basically it's just for people just to connect. So they know that it's available. It's quite regular. If they want to join, they can join. If they cannot join, they don't join and so on. But it helps really to keep the, I would say, a good communication and also a good culture inside the company, exchange, and really promoting this DNA that we have. Helping then some of our customers is basically what we are applying internally. We are showing them as an example how it works, and then helping them to implement the same ways for them inside their own organization and so on, working on transformation, value changes and so on, making sure that there is good practice, connecting people to systems also, especially now when we are disconnected. So how to reconnect people with systems, with companies. This is things that we are working also in terms of transformation tool.
All right, so we'll move on to the next topic, which is around disconnected user experiences, which Alyson, you said is your top channel. I'd love to hear from you. Just before we go there, we got some cool ideas, or rather a probing question, a thought-provoking question came from Paolo Quaranta, who is saying, how are you driving a purpose-driven workplace so that money is not put as the center, but instead you create a pull effect? So what is being done in that regard? That's a thought-provoking question. I could spend an hour on that itself, right? So, and then the second one is people are creating, and this came from Rash again, we are developing a several community of practice groups, and they've seen in their organization creating a positive experience. So that said about the people and team side. So let's come to the disconnected experiences that you're referring to, the user experience. So Alyson, what did you do to crack it? Has this been a solved problem, or is it a perennial issue?
No, it's not a solved problem yet, but it's something we're focused on. So one of the things the pandemic has showed us is how disconnected our digital experience is, particularly for employees. And it's not Prudential. It's not different for us than anybody else. But really what's happened is we get into our silos on how we solve problems. So everybody's looking at the employee experience. It's probably one of the most commonly discussed buzzwords you hear now. And it's exciting for me because it's taken me a lot of years to hear the employee experience being front and center and not having to fight for why it's important. But in the same token, most enterprises are dealing with it in silos. So everybody's going after, how do I increase that employee experience? How do I make it a better employee experience? But in correcting it, you're actually propagating it, because each line of business is creating their own unique employee experience that still feels disjointed. Oftentimes we miss accessibility. I know we all talk about WCAG compliance and being accessible, but that same energy on our internal assets is not the same as we have for our external assets. So, really starting to think about how you drive that employee experience at an enterprise level. And it's something I'm working on right now. I can't say that I've cracked it. We're probably at some of the most basic entry points, but really trying to get executive sponsorship and buy-in from the top down, so you don't have one area of the organization championing this and then having to fight the silos of, everybody else's different focuses, and try to say, how do we bring this together and develop? You don't have to replace every platform that you have, but how do you develop that layer around it so you can bring the employee experience? Even think about how we return to the office. It's so different. We used to come in, we're in Newark, so we had to make parking. You had to make parking reservations, and that was the extent of it. Well, today you have to deal with, making sure your vaccines are up to date, making sure you take your health questionnaire, making reservations for the rooms and the desks, because we've moved back into a hybrid space. So if you think about all the steps an employee needs to take just to walk into the front door, a lot of steps. So we have to think about how we package that up and make it a universal, easy to navigate, and then searchable throughout, right? Because right now, finding information, everybody's got it, but there's no universal place that you go to search the information in an internal company. Sometimes people will come to me and say, well, where do I go to look at my retirement benefit? I should be able to tell you like that. And sometimes I even get stuck, and I own the assets on where I go for what. So I think it's really getting enterprises to understand the importance of this and think about, like, we did a study and it was absolutely fascinating. We have hundreds of ways we interact with our employees, hundreds of different places they have to connect to do their day job through the enterprise. And so it's really a challenge that I know I'm focused on right now. Love to hear if anybody else is focused on that, but I think it's going to be really important, especially as we continue through hybrid agility and the ideas around, we don't go into the office and go to the same desk anymore. Now we have hoteling spaces. We have to figure out how to find people, and even that in-office experience is going to be really different, because I may not be sitting next to the same people that I normally sit next to. So how do we make that really easy to find my colleague that I want to do business with, or they're sitting on a floor I'm not familiar with? How do I navigate to that floor so I can find the person that I want to work with, or a conference room I've never been to? How do I order my food or make a parking arrangement all from one place? And I think that's going to become really important as we come back, because I think our employees are going to be expecting a very different experience than they have asked for in the past.
So you're almost saying the analog meets digital, right? The analog problems need to be dealt with. And that's also an opportunity for us to deploy digital wherever we can. So that's a new experience, but it is not a kludgy experience.
It's a connected experience.
It's a connected experience.
Accessible and connected. Those two things are so important, and easily searchable.
Yeah, I think in that area, Alyson, one of the things we've started focusing on is, we have a lot of data about the ways in which employees connect with us, the interactions we have with our employees. So how can you use that data to make that experience more meaningful and leverage that data to create better experiences for our employees? So I think that's been a core area of focus. Typically, organizations do that with their customers, but thinking of our employees as stakeholders in this experience and using that data to create the same richness for them, we've been trying to leverage that.
Okay, so so whatever we are speaking about here is a connected experience, assuming that the blessing comes and the funding comes from the top. Is the devil in the details? So let's take, Frank, your input on this, because you talk to quite a few companies.
Mm-hmm.
If they're trying to create a connected experience, do they get stuck that I want experience for my department this way and the other person does it differently, and then there's a tug of war, or it is simply a technology issue, or there is no central leadership around it? Where is the root cause?
I think some of the failure that we see, and sorry, I'm always saying more or less the same thing, but is when people are pushing technology to solve a problem. So, for example, they will say we need to connect, so let's integrate data and we'll have the solution, it will work. And they forget to discuss with the end user, then it will fail, because people tend to go back to what is very easy, tend to go back to the shortcuts. And there is this famous word from a Google founder that if a product does not pass the toothbrush test, then it's not a good product. So this is this kind of thing that we are looking at, how when we are helping our customer is really to make sure that we are spending enough time into this design thinking, onboarding the different perspective, to make sure that when we are looking at this connectivity or usability, the usability is really here and make the right impact, and also explaining to the people how they will use it in the new ways. So for that, working also on some both technology approach, implementation approach, but also transformation approach for the people, like having people that will be evangelists inside the companies also to help. So this is very important. So that's why bringing the technology, the people, and the business at the same time around the table, thinking at the problem together, usually this is where we see a good outcome and a successful formula or recipes to tackle this problem most of the time.
Neelesh, now let's get to your specific challenge that you mentioned. What did you do so far to crack it, and where are you with it?
Yeah, look, for the business we are in demands high level of resiliency, security, and compliance in order for us to meet our core business requirements. And as you look at that, at the same time, we are also seeing a tremendous need to bring in new technologies like digital ledger technology, cloud technologies, and so on into our ecosystem. So part of our focus has been in ensuring that we are able to blend both of these things together. And that requires us to be focused and driven in ensuring that these considerations around security, resiliency are considered right up front. So we've built frameworks in order to drive this specifically. We've set up practices around resiliency, which include things like failure mode analysis. In other words, our teams are thinking right up front, what happens if you're reliant on a cloud provider and the connections to those providers are severed, or the provider experiences a large outage. Not to say we haven't seen that in the last couple of months with some very high-profile incidents. So I think thinking about these things upfront, having a playbook on how you would react to such incidents. Are your applications built in to self-heal in these scenarios and provide levels of functionality which would not probably be perfect, but acceptable when the world around them is experiencing challenges? Those are the kinds of things which we've been baking into our application design, application development, as well as the infrastructure which sits around it.
So it seems like it's a project, it's no longer a problem, right? You cracked it in a way. You got a playbook. Yeah.
Well, I would say it's more of a journey, right? And so I think we are on that journey. I don't think so we've gotten to the end state yet, like many of the problems we've talked about, but we are making progress.
Okay. So, Frank, your thing was around usability, right? Stickiness of the usability and consistency, etc. And you had been talking, I saw a pattern when you were responding to many of these situations or the scenarios that other leaders are facing. You kept bringing up this factor of usability. So is it that, okay, you can go and help a customer if you solve the problem, but is the problem at their end? Is it a culture problem, the political problem, budget problem? What holds back? How should somebody work as an enterprise besides, of course, banking on a service provider like you or anyone else that they have partnered with, what should they be doing differently?
It's a good question. Just to tell you one anecdote, we were activated for one big RFP, a big customer, I cannot name it. They wanted to change how they were working with their end customers. They're doing e-commerce. And what they were asking us is how they can redesign their applications. And the process was quite clear. When we answered the RFP, we told them we not teach you how you can redesign your application. What we want to understand is what is the customer journey that you want to have for your end customer. Then based on that, we will look with you, technically speaking, how we have to redesign your application. So we were turning their whole process to always see what is a business challenge that they want to solve, what are the expectations that they have, and trying to really scope well with the customers, what are their success criteria. So at the end of the day, they are happy with what we can deliver. And this is today the main change in terms of engagement that we have with customers, where many years ago, it was mainly, I would say, pure outsourcing, IT services, and so on. But now people are really driven by, I have a business challenge, I need to go fast because there is pandemic, there's thing, I need to be resilient and so on. So trying to express what is your success factor, what is a success for you, and then helping them to achieve this success. So with the SKM methodology, we have methodology like what we call value toolbox, how to analyze the success, how to be able to design also based on the success criteria, putting in place framework like objective, key result framework, and so on, to be able to measure it. Especially when you're talking about a full agile methodology, when you are no longer in this classic waterfall, full agile, usually you don't have a clear specification. You have a problem, you don't have specification. So when you engage with a customer, you have really to engage on this value-based engagement and designing with them how you will be able to measure the success and delivering this to them. And this is the main challenge today that we see, because still many people are speaking about full agile, but they are still, at the end of the day, they will ask us, what is the schedule, what is the planning, what are the requirements, and so on. And then we tell them, but if I have a planning, I'm no longer in a full agile. So how to move? So this is, I would say, a lot of education and really able to have this trust relationship and working on this value-based, I would say, delivery, and tackling the core problem that people want to do. Then after the technology will come, we'll always find a technical solution most of the time. If there's compliance is very important, but it's not an issue per se. And this is the main point, I would say, if that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, totally. So we will wrap it up and I will ask my favorite question. So since you are all a leader, right? And while you might be looking for other people to help you, you want the resources, you want the blessing and the budget from the management. What would you do for you and with you? In the sense, what would you fix yourself, in yourself, so that you are able to position yourself as a leader, as an individual, to help make digital practical and measurably impactful? So it is about what you're fixing in yourself, starting with you, Karl. Just a few words. 2-3 words is good enough.
Of course, let's just have that bus come straight. No, I actually really loved Alyson's comment on leaders, because and I've had development shops all over the globe for me, but I'm still a very much in-person leader. And you look at that leadership styles and getting different people out of their comfort zones. And how do you really, it comes down to communication and relations. So if you're looking at your leaders breaking their barriers down, to work with those teams, I think that's a fantastic start, kind of pushing over on some of those teams, because this is it's a hard challenge in front of everyone.
So is that what you're going to fix in yourself, Karl?
I think it's not just in myself, obviously, but it gets into the communication. But you also look at getting the leaders to start to relate to things that are out of their comfort zones, start to push them and different leaders, different levels, different places. Get them out of their comfort zone, start to put them in places where they're not normally accustomed to being. So
All right.
that is, I think, probably my takeaway. Thank you, Alyson.
Absolutely. David, quick one.
Quick one is, the only constant I say in IT is change. So it's being constantly open to that change. It's a positive thing, right? And soliciting honest feedback, asking those dumb questions, essentially. Say, are you happy? What can we change? Like there's no, no stupid ideas. That's worked for him. So open to that consistent change is key.
Franks, quickly.
On myself, I would say always challenging myself. This is quite important to keep open mind at the end of the day. So,
All right. Neelesh?
Communication and adaptability, right? So those are the two things which I would stress on, ensuring that you're communicating up, sideways, below in a fashion which aligns people appropriately. And secondly, one thing which we have learned has been that adapting is key to being successful in our business, which is changing rapidly as we speak.
Alyson?
For me, I think it's remaining vulnerable. Our leadership styles are changing. The topics that we're talking about in the workplace are changing, and allowing myself to be vulnerable on the things that I'm uncomfortable with in this changing world.
All right. What a great conversation today. Thank you so much to our panelists, Karl Hightower, David Baker, Frank Bignone, Alyson Hudson, and Neelesh Prabhu. Thanks all of you who have joined us today, attended, and contributed to make this workshop successful. Thank you so much again, FPT, for being our sponsor. And I request everyone to please help and complete the feedback form, which will pop up when we end this webinar. So thank you so much. Enjoy your life and keep doing the good work. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.